We love to bash the legacy media on the show. Let's go through some of the receipts proving just how terrible the legacy media has been over the last 5 years. Let's start with Politico. Remember, we all know the Hunter Biden story, the Russian disinformation group, where dozens of former intel officials said, "Oh, no, this is true. We have to go through and make sure that Hunter Biden, nobody's going to look at any of these stories." All right, February of 2021, let's look at NBC News. They were saying that it was unlikely that COVID came from the Wuhan lab. The WHO said so you must believe it. Bloomberg, the same year, said the strongest sign yet that inflation was transitory. We all lived through Joe Biden and knew how expensive all the eggs got. The New York Times in 2023 said how and why illegal border crossings have dropped so dramatically. That's not a headline from the Trump administration. That was the Biden administration with a wide open border. And just last summer, The Hill said that Biden has diminished energy, but remains sharp and commanding. Okay, so we hate the media here, right? This is part of the deal. But at least right now, you guys, there might be a little bit of the tide turning because Donald Trump just scored a huge win over the fake news media. CBS actually owes Donald Trump $16 million for doctoring the Kamala Harris 60 Minutes interview. So what Donald Trump is going to get, it's going to be $16 million that is going to be put towards Trump's presidential library, plaintiff's fees and costs. There's also going to be a prompt release of presidential candidate interview transcripts in the future. But of course, Matt, there's going to be no apology that will be included from CBS as part of this deal. We'll give you 16 mil, but we're not going to say we're sorry.
I mean, in this case, an apology would, of course, be a good thing, but I don't think one is needed. They just have egg on their face and they're embarrassed. And here's what happened over the last years. A funny thing happened on the way to tyranny, and there was a time when everyone was thinking very dark thoughts about what was going on in media, because what you really had was a kind of corporate fascist warfare going on. You saw this with what happened to Tucker and the results of the lawsuit that Fox was involved in. You saw some very dark, scary things happen with lawsuits and the like on the other side of this. And they were politically motivated. There were some very dark forces behind them. But at the end of the day, it was so egregious. What was going on was so egregious that the American legal system, is beat up and battered, but it's still in place. And what you see now is a sort of reckoning. So you see this all over, right? This isn't the first suit that Trump has won against the legacy media. They're having to pony up some money. And remember, I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse and others have actually won versus the media. And what this does every time it happens is diminish their power. So there is, indeed a tide turning back the other way. We need a lot more of it. We need to see these companies absolutely destroyed. I think they need to be remade or completely destroyed. But this is a win. There's no doubt about it.
Well, Chris, we see it right now with CBS, right? It's $16 million. We can go back to ABC and George Stephanopoulos. ABC had to pay $15 million plus one. So we get to the same number at the end. The extra $1 million was to cover all of the legal fees. I mean, at some point, isn't NBC News just going to be next, right? Just 1, 2, 3. They're going to be setting themselves up. We know there's going to be something that you can sue them for at some point, because this is just so egregious what they've been doing over these last few years.
Well, it is egregious, but I mean, I'm not quite yet as optimistic that the courts are caught up with where they ought to be on how badly the media has been using its special legal carve-outs that have been given it by lawmakers in order to be a force for good and for informing the public. They haven't been using those to be a force for good. They haven't been using those to inform the public. They've been using them to get across a partisan idea. They've been using them to attack the American way of life, essentially. But this actually didn't go to trial in the end. They ended up settling because this was in the way, they claim, of a big merger deal that was worth significantly more to them. But still, this willingness by the president to sue, the willingness that we've seen more recently, more and more, to sue the Covington's Catholic school kid who was his life was turned upside down, and his own his own school condemned him based on false media reports is a great example and a heroic one. At the end of the day, I'm not exactly sure if Trump would have won this because of all the special carve-outs that we've given, where you basically have to prove animus. Now, that would be a fun thing to do, because then you get discovery, and I guarantee that you would find serious animus against Donald Trump if you were to do discovery over there. But we don't know exactly how it would have gone, because they just said, whatever, we're just going to pay it out. We don't want to deal with this. And you know what? Good. They're $16 million poor. And I've got news for you. The $1 billion insane lawsuit that Fox News lost materially impacted the company's projection, their future, and their business operations. You'll probably notice that since that lawsuit came down, the number of guests that are new that you don't recognize if you ever tune in is dropped precipitously. They basically rely on their own people in-house for almost all reporting that they actually do, or any commentary that they do. It's very rare that they have outside guests. The list got very small. The budget got severely constrained. You might notice a lot less makeup seems to be done. A lot of people who come on without any at all. The daytime shows, it's basically gone. These are cost-saving measures that were done because $1 billion is actually a huge amount of money for any company. $16 million, a little bit less, but when CNN loses lawsuits, major lawsuits, there are layoffs. I know some of the people who, and unfortunately with CNN, it's always the good people who go first, because the mean ones, the vicious ones, the sharks, they will last. They will stab anyone in the back. They'll take out the working mother before they'll lose their fancy job. This death by 1,000 cuts is essential to pushing back against this media, because we have just given them so many privileges out of trust that has been abused.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that they don't do this is because they don't want to go to trial, right? And because they don't want, which is the same thing that happened to Fox, at least according, this very weird stuff went on in that whole case, but at least according to the general counsel, who left with I think a $16 million bonus, who's, sort of right-leaning. I mean, he's at Federalist Society stuff. I mean, he said he wanted to fight it, but they didn't want to fight it. And they thought it was better to take care of it before the election. And of course, everyone else and their mother is thinking they don't want more to be revealed into public, into the dirty business inside the company, or what would embarrass them, right? Now, in these companies, like, that hasn't happened yet. They don't want anyone. They don't want discovery on any of this stuff. So there's a lot of really weird stuff going on here. And then, of course, we should say what you were referring to. New York Times v. Sullivan establishes this high standard from the 1960s that you have to prove actual malice in these cases, and that's something that many people on the right should be overturned, because they're hiding behind that protection, and I think we absolutely need to get rid of it. The idea that any of this should be protected, this is all part of a battle, a war, right, that's going on in the media every day, and the legal side of it is just another facet.